I'm Joanne Thurlow, and I am very pleased to be here with you. Thank you very much for inviting me and tell you a little bit about myself. I am the global head of IT in Siemens Energy in the Industrial Application Solutions business unit. And Siemens Energy is a large organization of about 90,000 people with a number of different business units. So this is my area that I am responsible for. And before I get into telling you about my journey to how I've gotten to the level that I'm at, I'll give you just a little bit of a backdrop. Obviously, I won't go through all of these details with you, but just to give you a bit of context, what Siemens Energy Solutions is really all about. We have around 3,600 employees based in 39 countries, and we do around €1 billion worth of business a year across 6 main vertical markets. Now, because Siemens Energy is an energy-based company, we're doing a lot of technical solutions in electrification, automation, and digitalization within these various markets. And what does that mean, EAD? What does that mean? It could be designing electrical systems that run a complete cruise ship, or automating processes on a military submarine, or creating a digital twin for an offshore drilling platform. So, and you can see from this that we have our main headquarters in Erlangen and some key sites in Oslo, Hamburg, and Rothschild, which is in the US, and then some of our other key sites that we have. And my job is to support all of those users in those various countries in developing those engineering solutions, as well as the day-to-day work. And give you a bit of an idea as to how complex that could actually be when we talk about sustainable energy and the energy industry, which, you know, I'm sure all of you have been and hearing about sustainable energy and the COP26 and so on, as we look to reduce our carbon emissions. And this is very much what the focus of Siemens Energy is all about. And you can see through this that there are any number of energy solutions, activities, focus areas in behind that. And one of my priorities, in addition to ensuring operational excellence and being able to do the day-to-day business in the organization, is that we have a global engineering environment where we could have engineers from one side of the world to the other end of the world and all the time zones in between, working on a common project together. And that requires a very focused, high-end IT or tech environment in behind it through the tools, the infrastructure, performance, and so on to be able to deliver that. So part of what I do is I work very closely with our central IT, our suppliers, our regional IT, and so on. Myself, I have a team of 10 people, that's all, and we support those entire 39 countries and all of the requirements that are therein. And I generally manage an annual budget of around 25 to 30 million euros. So it is a lot of responsibility to make sure that that environment supports our business as it goes forward. But how did I get here? Well, my journey to this point has literally been decades in the making. And I'm actually 4 decades in and going now into my 5th decade, which, okay, you know, that's going to date me. I get that. But I have learned a lot along the way that hopefully I can share with you and get you some insights and hopefully get you really excited about what a career in tech could actually entail. So I'm often asked, how did I actually get excited about tech? And at one point, and this is sort of an unusual way, not that one that would be necessarily expected. I've always been very interested in mechanical things. And because my father had been in the Canadian Navy, I spent a lot of time going on board different ships and so on with my father and such, which always got me interested in the mechanics. And one year I was about 16, there was a ship that had arrived from Holland, or from the Netherlands, apologies. that was completely computerized. And it was the first of its kind. And it was his maiden voyage. And I happened to be on there. And to me, seeing that computerization, it was just like magic. And that's where my passion for tech got ignited. And I can actually remember the moment or at least the day when that just totally fascinated me. How does this work? And that's what started me into the whole field of tech. Now, at school, because I was still in school at that point in time, as many of you will be, I had what I refer to as a bit of a fluffy failure. And that is they offered a first programming course. And I thought it would be one of those fluffy subjects, easy credits, Mickey Mouse credit, as we used to call it back in Canada. And in the first semester, I failed miserably. It was unstructured programming. I absolutely failed miserably. It was probably the worst grades I had ever gotten in my entire academic career to that date. And it really made me stop and think, well, maybe this is not as easy as I thought it was. However, the next semester, we had a new teacher who taught structured programming, and I was hooked. Once it clicked, it just kind of went from there. So by the time I get to the end of school, and I started to think about, well, what are my educational options after this? Because this is at a time when if you wanted to go into computer science, it was all science, it was all maths. And if you wanted business, then you took a business degree, but you didn't have any computer to go along with it. And I really wanted something of the two. So much like what you could get today at UTCs, University Tech Colleges in the UK, I went to a similar type setup, which were very new at the time. And I went to a couple of college, got a couple of college degrees where it gave me that balance between the business and IT. And that really set me up for my career going forward, because it gave me the ability to step into either side or either world. And that carried me throughout the last 4 decades. But as I decided to go into this, and there was a lot of challenging personal beliefs and perceived limitations that I had to deal with before I even started on this journey. And that is, I actually came from a neighborhood that many people either didn't finish school or they certainly didn't go on to post-secondary. I'm only one of 2 of my siblings out of 5 of us that did go on or did graduate school. And I'm the only one to do post-secondary. And there were a lot of personal conceptions or misconceptions, I should say, about all of that as to what was possible, being a kid from that neighborhood, to think about going on and doing something post-secondary and pursuing a career in computers, which was so new and all the rage, was really unheard of, and it was breaking boundaries. I was to learn over the last few decades that I'm very good at breaking boundaries on an ongoing basis, but I didn't realize it at the time. So I had to kind of get past that, thinking, and maybe this is outside of my mirror and reaching too far. And then I thought, why not me? Why can't I be that person that actually breaks those boundaries and pushes on? So onwards I did go. I found myself, when I got into the 90s, very rapid fire career progression. I had moved from Nova Scotia to Ontario, and I started working for Corel at a user support level. And within a decade, I went from entry level to director level. Now, at this time, something amazing had come out onto the market from a tech perspective. And that was something called the World Wide Web, or the internet as we know it today. And that generated a whole industry boom around companies getting online and creating a digital presence, what was known as the dot-com bubble at the time. That allowed for rapid fire growth in companies with technology. And obviously going along with that, because I was somebody who always wanted to continue to learn, that I found myself very quickly advancing as the opportunities came up. Now, at one point, I did stop and I took some time to invest in myself. And this is something I recommend to people. And the sooner you do this when you start a career, I think even better. And that was, I went to a career counselor. And you don't have to go to a career counselor as such, but what we did as a career counselor is what's really important here. And that was personality assessments and vocational interest assessments. So I got to understand, who am I as a person? What is my personality? How do I work? And how does that align to what my vocational or work interests are? Because when we talk about the tech industry, people immediately think it's going to be very technical, it's going to be very analytical, it's all going to be about coding. And yes, that's very true. But there's a lot of other things within the tech industry as well, and career options that are for the more creative or the more personal type, rather than the putting your head down and programming and coding all the time. What I also found during this decade into the 90s was that I started to do a lot of international working. And I really enjoyed that cultural exchange with people from other countries. In particular, I worked very closely with the president of Sanyo Semiconductor out of the US, which was very unusual, again, breaking boundaries. Because not only was it unusual that a Japanese president would work closely with someone who was at a lower rank than him, but that would be a Westerner, and then a female Westerner is that. So I still found in the 90s, I was starting to break some boundaries as I was going along. But as with life, always there's the ups and then come the downs. And the dot-com bubble had burst. Also, when I went into the knots, I found that I had a lot of family changes. My daughter, my stepson had become young adults. I had just recently divorced. And I hit a really major pivot point in my life. And that really resulted in me having to step back in my career in order to go forward. And what that was I, at that point, had to make some decisions about what I wanted to do. And I had always wanted to live and work abroad. So I decided I would take a gap year. And I came over to the UK, moved to the UK. I had no job. I had no working visa, no business network. I knew one person, and I went forward from there, and I started rebuilding my career. Now, when I started, I was earning a quarter of what I had been earning for back in Canada. But I don't ever regret doing that, because I got to go forward. And then the next decade, this last 10 years, 10, 15 years have been some of the most exciting of my career. And the levels that I've reached are way beyond anything I ever imagined me getting to. When I started in the UK, shortly afterwards, I had, back in 2011, I had started working for Siemens in Lincoln, in the East Midlands. And within a couple of years in that, at a middle level management position, I had an opportunity to take on a global IT coordinating role, which took me to Norway, to live in Norway, in Oslo. And I just happened to be at the right place at the right time at that point, because we did an organizational shift, which saw IT go from being decentralized and scattered around the world to being centralized. And through the course of that organizational change, I found myself at a C-level management, third level from the top, and only one of a very small percentage of women in a very male-dominated field. And I found myself at the position that I am now as global head of IT for my business unit. So it really was, right place, right time. Some people would say it was luck. Yeah, sometimes that is the case. And when you're into your career going forward, there will be those opportunities that come along, and it will seem like it's just luck, and that's okay. But what often happens when you're in those situations, and just like back at the very beginning of my career, when I thought, well, I'm just a kid from the other side of the tracks, you start to face imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're a fake, you don't really deserve to be there. And this is, again, something many of you are going to encounter at different points in your career. I had a lot to learn about stepping into this role. I had some very good mentors and managers around me. I had some not so good managers around me. But what I really had to focus on was getting past that imposter syndrome and realizing that it's okay to be learning, and that I'm actually possibility and progress rather than an imposter. And that's so important for you to keep in mind when you go into any kind of career that you do, but particularly in tech, because you can move around a lot and you have a lot of opportunities. So what I found was I found myself in a whole new world. And through the course of these last years, with all that I have learned, I'm now in a position where I can educate and inspire and enable transformation in individuals, be it through a keynote of talking to you like I am today, or working with organizations to take a look at how green their tech is and how they can move towards being more sustainably supported in their tech environments as they go forward. So all of this is transformation across it, and this is where I'm at today. Now, in this last couple of years, Siemens Energy, which was part of Siemens AG, the main company, we split out and became a separate standalone company, which has meant cutovers. And in the middle of all of that has been a pandemic and Brexit. So it's been a world of change. And for me, during that time, just at Christmas last year, we moved from Germany, which is, I had gone from Norway to Germany. We moved from Germany, and now I'm actually living on the Isle of Man, working as a digital nomad. And this is very important as well, because there's always going to be change in your career, in your life, the technologies, and this becomes important to learn how to manage change, whatever point that it comes into your life as you go forward. Now, I mentioned that through these 4 decades, the roles have been ever changing, and I'm always have been learning. And that is one of the cornerstones when you come into the tech industry, because the tech industry changes all the time. The technology is evolving, and that's what keeps the magic going. That's what keeps that passion burning for me. I'm absolutely amazed at what we're able to do today through the tech industry. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk to all of these different positions, but what I'd like for you to take away from this is that your career in tech can be many different types of roles, and they all have value, and they all develop your skills for going forward. To get to where I am today, where not only am I global head of IT, but I now have my first non-executive director position here on the Isle of Man. The government has the digital tech side of things. They have an executive board, which we actually plan the tech strategy for the island for the next 3 years. And the tech industry here on the Isle of Man is actually quite extensive, and it generates a third of the country's revenues, both on and off island. I've also become a Love Tech committee member, which is a group of absolutely amazing ladies here on the island, and we are actively promoting STEM to particularly young girls, but young students or students like yourselves. And I'm also now using all that I have learned to do a lot more global speaking, such as this today, Women in Tech, or on sustainable energy and transformation. So you can see that there's a wide variety of opportunities, and this is just some. Now, I started my training with programming, and after I left school, I have never written a line of code. But DevOps, as it's referred to today, is huge, and so many opportunities in that. And when we talk about the tech itself, the technology, just in the last 40 years alone, 40 years, God, 4 decades, look at how much has actually transpired for all of us. You know, we've gone from a Apple Mac computer and putting a cassette and being able to take it with you with your Sony Walkman. And, you know, one of my favorites in all of this is here in the 1990s, when the World Wide Web was introduced, and people did not believe it was going to amount to anything, including Bill Gates of Microsoft fame. He didn't think it would amount to anything, but clearly it has totally changed every aspect of our life. Back in the 90s, Amazon was just literally a startup. And yes, that is Jeff Bezos and Amazon working in a little corner. Google at that time was just beta. It was new software. As we evolved, and this to me was the real changing decade over the last 4 years, because wireless and GPS became mainstream. Whereas predominantly they were military prior to that, they really became mainstream. And that's what enabled social media. amongst other technologies, to really start taking over. And that's where we find ourselves over this last decade has been so much about the smart technology, the Internet of Things, automating all of these processes. I mean, it is so embedded into every aspect of our life, as more so even for yourselves than even for someone at my age. You know, you're born with all of this tech and you're using it from a very early age. And what's so exciting is in just the same way that the last 4 decades has seen such leaps and bounds in the tech field, so too will we see in the next coming decades, especially with the emergence of artificial intelligence and robotics, smart homes and smart cities, digital twins and renewable energy. There's so many areas to go into and to focus on. And it's not just developing that tech, because for some of you, you may think, yeah, but I'm not that techie. I'm not that, I don't want to be that geek. I don't want to be, or I'm not that interested in that. But there's lots of other areas that you can get focused on within tech and bring it into, because somebody has to design the user interface, or there's the non-tech roles such as the marketing and the communication that can come into it. So the scope in the tech industry is so large. You really can come into it and take any number of areas. And I would challenge you, like, why not you? Why not you come into this industry? I mean, it's amazing where it's going, not only in terms of the technology, but the sheer size, scope, and growth of the market and the demand for tech skills. For example, the tech industry is forecast to reach 3.75 trillion pounds in this year alone in terms of valuation. There are, in 2019, and I've not been able to find updated figures for 2020 yet, but there were 4.6 million job postings related to tech around the globe that were open just in 2019. Almost 1 million of those in the emerging tech fields. And because of the pandemic and so many companies moving into remote working, and enabling hybrid working, that demand has gone up exponentially as well. The median tech wage is at around £75,000 a year. Obviously, depending on what type of roles, there'll be some variation to that. But that's the general average of what you can expect. So very well paying, lots of opportunity and variety. What's also interesting with the tech sector is that it is expanding 3 times faster than the rest of the UK economy alone, and is worth nearly £184 billion, a huge amount of money. And what's really missing in this industry is not only the skilled digital workers that are needed, but there's a notable shortage from a gender and a BAME, the diversity side of things. So especially if you're someone from those underrepresented groups and you come into the tech industry, you have even that much more opportunity, because honestly, in the tech industry, your culture, your religion, your race, none of that matters, because the demand for the skills is so high. It breaks down many, many of those barriers. So this is a market or a field that you can come into that can offer you a wide variety of opportunities of learning, ongoing learning and engagement, develop whole different sets of skills throughout your career, and truly impact how people live their lives today. You could find yourself working on an application that has a mobile app that maybe helps dementia patients remember things, or other technology, from the health industry that's going to help improve people's health. GPS systems that help you track your local pet, in case it gets lost, whatever it happens to be. There is no limit to it. It's all what you decide to make. So, I asked the question, why not me, when I started on my career 4 decades ago? And look where it's taken me. At that time, I would never have expected to be where I am. But I would put that to you. Why not you? Why not take on the tech challenge and see where it takes you? I wish I knew more, understood more what my own potential would have been. I didn't have an environment that encouraged it. But if I did, I look at what I've accomplished and I think, God, if I had had someone there to cheer me on, if I had that extra belief in myself to see what was actually there, because this type of conversation was not possible when I started my career. It just did not, the opportunities were just not there to see what was actually out there. And my career would have gone in a whole other direction, I'm sure, and it would have gotten to this level even faster than I've gotten. So yeah, I think if there was one thing I would have liked is to have more belief, self-belief as to what I thought was possible for me, and that more knowledge about what was actually the possibilities out there. Because when you're in your teens, it is really difficult, because when you're in your teens or your early 20s, it's all about trying to conform and be part of the local environment and identifying. But if you have these interests, there's so many amazing people in this area that as long as you can find yourself somebody who's a bit comparable, and that really helps. And the one thing I can tell you, as much as you may feel that you don't fit today into certain neighborhoods, I can tell you it really does change when you get into your 20s. You find, sorry, I'm going to get emotional. You'll find when you get away from school and you get out there, people start to just see this person in front of them, and then they just accept you as you are. There are always going to be people who are going to challenge that, and we're always going to feel that somewhere we don't fit in. That's where the imposter syndrome comes in. And it's understanding it's okay to feel like an imposter, but don't live like an imposter.